Basics Live, Season 1, Episode 38, TheSmokinApe Rebroadcast. Got that coming up next. Bill from Ham Radio Basics here. If you like the content of this video or anything on my channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any future content. With that, let's begin. The holiday season is in full swing, and I'm taking some much needed time off during this month of December 2023. Tonight, you're in for a real treat. I'm going to be featuring my interview and rebroadcast with TheSmokinApe. TheSmokinApe is one of my favorite ham radio YouTubers out there, and his technical knowledge is off the charts, and his presentations are matter of fact and spot on. So without any further ado, let's roll that clip in its entirety. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Ham Radio Basics Live, Season 12, Season 1, Episode 12. Very special guest, TheSmokinApe. Ape, how are you this evening?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
Doing real good. Doing real good. Got a lot to talk about here, and well, I had and I told Frank, I said because I had Frank on last week. I told him, I said you got some big shoes to fill this week because guess who's going to be on next week? Okay? Yeah, and I love Frank. Well, I talked to Anthony. I don't know if you know him. He's N8DOX.
Yep. Yeah, I met him at HamVention, HamCation.
Yeah, great guy. Absolutely love him. Well, he told me when we did like a HamVention preview, and I had him on, and he told me he said Bill, he said Frank is an absolute hoot. You will love him, and I did. Frank is just fantastic. I just loved having him on last week. He was great.
Yeah, he is great. And when we were speaking of HamCation, when I was there, I ran into Frank, and he and I walked through the swap meet or the flea market area or something like that, and we had a great time. So he actually asked me then if I would be on his stream, and so I told him, yeah, and that's scheduled for the middle of May. So
awesome, that's fantastic. So
yeah,
one of the first things that I do with everybody, and I've had everybody on. I mean, I'm having just about everybody on. I've had Jason, I've had Josh. I mean, I've just had a great number of people on. How everybody got started in ham radio, because I always find it real interesting. So how did you get started?
Well, when I was younger in high school, I got exposed to ham radio a little bit. My buddy's dad had a big tower in the backyard with a beam on it, and we used to look at the equipment, and because we all thought Dukes of Hazzard, and CBs and stuff was like the radio way to go, and where I lived, it was a little bit more rural, so everybody had CBs and stuff in their cars, and so all my buddies, like, we didn't have cell phones obviously back then, so when you got out of school or got done whatever you were doing, you would just get on the CB and we would make a call out, and then all your buddies would say, "Oh, we're over here, we're doing this," and and meet up, and there were hams in my high school, but. I just joke around and tell people the story. It's like, when I was looking at the girls that hung out with the ham radio guys in high school and the girls that hung out with the CB guys, I went and bought a CB. So, and I used that for years, playing around. And then I stopped, but I'd always been a little bit of a fan of RF. At work, I was telling you, I work in IT. One guy came in one day and he had one of those SDR dongles. And he's like, "Hey, this is a British television antenna." And he goes, "We could pick up radio stuff with it." And so we all got them and we play around with them all the time. And then one of my buddies and I got real big into police scanners. And because I worked in IT, I did all the programming and code plugs and stuff like that for him. And we used those. And then eventually one day he calls me up and goes, "Hey, man, we can buy these Baofeng radios and they're like $25 and we could talk." And he lived pretty far away. He goes, "But there's a repeater between us." He goes, "All we got to do is get licensed." I'm like, "Bro, I'm not trying to learn Morse code." But then the code thing had been lifted, and so we bought Baofengs and got tested, and it just kept rolling from there.
Awesome, that's fantastic. Well, for me, I moved to Florida in 2011, and one of the first things I was thinking about was alternate forms of communication, because my wife, ever so gently reminded me we have this thing called hurricane season down.
Yeah,
and you need to be prepared for that. Well, I'm finding out from everybody who says, no, what you need to do is you need to get a ham radio license. So that got the ball rolling for me. And I got within a year, I passed all 3 exams. But then it's kind of like life happened, and that was like 2014. It wasn't until like a couple of years ago that I just dove in with both feet and got going. it's just, that kind of stuff happens.
Yeah,
So,
so my buddy, the one that I was telling you about, he and I and a couple other guys are very preparedness minded. And one of the things that we all wanted to do, there was a bunch of them, but one of the things was that we want to learn alternative communication technologies and skills, and so that was like ham radio. So like for me, it was a very very methodical approach to learning about RF, learning about shortwave radio, learning about tactical communications using UHF, VHF, and then progressing to things like HF. It was really more of intentionally wanting to build a skill set versus enter into a hobby, which it's turned into.
well, one of the things that absolutely amazes me about your channel, okay, you get into the nuts and bolts of things, and I absolutely love that because to me it kind of reminds me back in the day when I was growing up, and I don't know if you remember these or not, but Radio Shack used to sell these 160 in one electronic project kits.
Yeah.
You would you could build your own radio, for example, or build your own counter and things like that, and I dove into that, and that's what I love about your channel. Is you dive into that stuff and you show things that are foundational, and I absolutely love that.
Yeah, awesome, man. Thanks. And that's the whole goal or approach, is really to be able to create an environment that is, accessible and friendly in terms of information to help people learn and grow as they do things. And I learn and grow as I do things too, right? So it really is more about, like, when I really started doing more ham radio YouTube stuff, it was because, like, the kind of information in a consumable format for me wasn't really readily available. And I felt that either stuff was overly technical or stuff was ambiguous in terms of the technology and how things actually worked. Because I think sometimes folks would just say, "Oh, this is what you do," but they weren't, really explaining it for whatever reason. So I tried to, like, I get questions all the time where people are like, "Thanks, I learned how to use this tool because of you," or "I learned how to do this because of you." And some cases they'll even progress, or they'll surpass what I was working on, and it's a fantastic thing to see.
That's a good thing when you get feedback like that, and I've already gotten that as well too. And I kind of, well, see, one thing, my dad was an elementary art teacher, and the one thing he told me, he said, "Do whatever you want to, but don't ever become a teacher." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, okay." So I got into IT, but I told him, this, he passed quite a while ago, but I think he would kind of be happy because not only am I doing this, and me in another light from
Yeah,
my drone channel as well too. And one of the things that I'm passionate about, and like you, and like just about everybody else I've come in contact with, is getting getting the news out, getting educational out,
yeah,
getting just getting a consistent message. And one of the things that I found, and maybe you can expound upon this a little bit, you know, I found, for me personally, I have found so many guys here have just been so incredibly friendly right off the top. No
yeah.
questions asked, answering questions all the time. I know, for instance, okay, I know I bugged Josh like about 2 or 3 years ago, like you wouldn't believe. And he was so polite, answered me every time. Jason, same thing. I'd ask him a question, boom, he'd come back. Michael Martins, who's been
Yeah, he's
fantastic.
great.
You know, they come back and they're just so good about this, and I really like that about the ham radio community on YouTube, because they're so friendly and so willing to help people. I really like that.
Yeah, it's great. And, I have a lot of people that ask me, "Hey, are you a teacher?" And I'm not. And I tell them, "No, I'm an IT nerd." And they're like, "Oh, okay. No wonder you're able to do this stuff with ham radio." But it's really more from just, studying and playing around. It's crazy because there isn't a day that goes by that I don't do something that's ham radio related. Uh, you know, I would have never thought that, in the past by any stretch of the imagination. But I do spend a lot of time, like, reading electronics manuals and looking at schematics. It's nerdy stuff just to try to learn more and get better. But I really, really enjoy it. Didn't think I would, but I do.
Well, and that's one of the things that I've learned as well. Is now one of the things that I used to do, my dad taught me to do it years ago, was, for example, one of my goals this year is to get back into soldering, and because
Yeah.
I tell you what, if you put a solder iron and saw her in front of me, I'm going to scream bloody murder because I'm going to screw it up. I'll guarantee it. Because it was what? It was probably at least 30 plus years ago. My dad showed me how to do it, and now, it's long gone and it's changed. So, and I know Janice, who's in the chat, suggested some practice kits, and because she asked somebody and told her about that. So that's one of the things. That's one of my goals, is to eventually do that. Probably next year. I may try. That dreaded thing called
Yeah.
yeah, because I'm like everybody said, there's no easy way to do it. You just got to dive in with
Yeah,
both feet.
I don't do the code, but the thing is that I always say I'm going to, but I always have something else I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And you take a look at things that are impactful versus urgency. Like if I build a new antenna, that's going to have more impact on me with less urgency than something like learning Morse code years from now. Then the Morse code would have a larger impact. So just being able to balance that out is a little bit of a challenge for me.
Yeah, and I'm with you too, because one of my big challenges where I live, they'll allow us a 20-foot flagpole in our yard at the HOA. So I've kind of decided to go that route. But my big problem with that is, obviously with a vertical, you need to have radials. Okay. Well, there's a company that comes in, a landscaping company that cuts our grass like every week, every 2 weeks, kind of a thing. So,
Yeah.
I would have to do it at a time of year when they only maybe come like once every month or so I can get those radials like in the ground, so they won't, I won't lose hundreds of dollars worth of wire,
Right.
by doing something like that. So, that's where I'm at right now. So, right now, what I'm doing is I'm using a Chameleon MPass 2.0, string a lot of coax out the back door, and
Right.
that's how I roll right now. It's one of that's one of those things. We all know HamVention's coming up, and I assume you're going to be going to HamVention, right?
Well, I got to tell you, I definitely was very much considering it and planning it, and actually started making plans. But we have had a family thing come up where I might not be able to go.
Okay.
So I won't know that for another couple hours. I should know tonight if I'm going to go or not. If I don't, there's going to be other opportunities. I've only been, when you talk about the big ham fest, I've only been to HamCation twice. Now, I've been to smaller regional ham fests. I haven't gone in a couple of years. Since the beginning of the pandemic, I haven't gone.
Right.
But we'll see. Had a really good time catching up with all of the ham tuber guys that you were talking about earlier. Met a lot of them for the first time in person, and these are folks that I've been on their shows, they've been on ours, and we've just had tons of conversations over the years. So it was really nice to meet people in person.
That is, well, this is gonna be my first time at HamVention. I've been to HamCation before because Orlando's only about an hour from me, and everybody said, and I asked Anthony when I had him on, he said, you know what, Bill, he says, make sure you have your walking shoes on when you go to Dayton.
Yeah.
And what's real interesting is where they have it in Dayton, it's really in Xenia, Ohio, which is about 10 miles actually outside of Dayton. But I'm real familiar with that area, extremely familiar with that area. My two older children went to college about 5 miles from there.
Gotcha.
So, I know that area like the back of my hand. One of the things that everybody said, get your walking shoes on because you're going to be doing a lot of walking with this. So we're going to be pulling in. We're going to be coming in like on Wednesday, Thursday. We're going to run out, get our credentials. I'm going to get press credentials for YouTube, that kind of thing. Maybe take a quick tour, see who's setting up. And then Friday, we're going to be out there all day. And then Saturday, going to be out there for a half day. So, I'm going to be running into people, which is going to be fantastic.
It should be fun. Well, see, it's funny because Dayton used to be at the convention center. I believe it was the convention center in Dayton, Ohio. And when they moved it, the new fairgrounds, I haven't been to either place, but all the pictures and the videos I see, the fairgrounds look fantastic. Like it's a nice, large, spacious area. There's tons of facilities there. Every year people would go to Dayton and then they would complain. And they would say, oh, the bathrooms are a mess, or, oh, there's no food, or there's no, it's stuffy in there. The building's dilapidated. And then when they moved it, they're like, it's just not Dayton anymore to me. I don't like it. And but it kind of speaks to some of that. I guess it's like legacy thinking in amateur radio, where everything has to stay the same there's, you can't improve on anything. You can't do anything different. There's only one way. And I know that what we do on my channel and then with the guys at Coffee and Ham Radio, we try to say, hey, look, let's turn ham radio into something that's evolving. Let's try to have fun. Let's try to do stuff that's different and bring a different approach to it. So I don't know. I just want to throw that out there. I am looking forward to, if I get to go this year, maybe not, it'll be next year, seeing the fairgrounds and getting out there. It's a really large event. So it should be a lot of fun.
Well, one of the things Anthony told me and that I got made aware of was maybe park like at the Xenia High School and take the shuttle over. He said that's the way to go because, you avoid all that headache and that hassle. And says it's less than 5 minutes. You're in the bus and you're there, and I'm definitely going to do something like that. But what never fails though? For example, when I drove to Orlando and I would, when we went, now I didn't go this year. And the reason I didn't go this year is it fell right on my wedding anniversary. So
Can't do that.
That wasn't, that was no fly zone as far as that's concerned. But when we did go out there, it never fails. If I drive a car there, all right, and I go to the flea market and I look through there, invariably I won't find anything. Okay. But conversely, if I fly somewhere and I go to the flea market, of course I'm going to find something. Of course it's going to need to be shipped, and from what Anthony told me, and I looked on their website, I believe that they have a booth where
like a shipping station.
The shipping station to do that, which is fantastic. And if I'm not mistaken, I know they had something like at Huntsville where you can do test your equipment, and I think they might have something like that at Dayton too.
It's a good idea if you can test it to go ahead. I think that T.O. was looking to buy a radio while he was down there, and he took it somewhere. He gave the guy his driver's license or something and took it to go get tested. But like what I say is, whenever I go to the smaller ham shows, or even when I was down at in Florida, what I wanted to always do was support the little guys, the little vendors. That doesn't necessarily mean the guys out in the swap meet section, but you get a lot of the smaller mom and pop ham vendors, and we want to keep them around. So I buy some connectors and some wire and some insulators and just, it may be stuff I need, I don't need, but it's, smaller purchases to keep those folks afloat. Because if we don't support them, they won't stay. Right. And
yeah. Well, Anthony was telling me about the folks that do Shack in a Box. And he was telling me the story behind the gentleman that runs that. And it's just incredible because it's a mom and pop kind of thing. And of course, their Shacks in a Box, they're ready to go. I mean, out the door with, all set up. And I really like that. And Jason was also telling me about the guy, he bought a 705 Go box. Didn't have the 705 in it, but it, it was ready to go. And he was telling me about that, the same thing kind of here, you like supporting these mom and pop kind of places. For example, I found a guy out of Louisiana, I think he's out of Baton Rouge. Did up our name badges because I hadn't gotten a name badge yet, so I got one for my wife. I also got my wife a T-shirt so she can wear one there as well. She does the videography when we go to events like this, which really
nice.
helps.
Yeah, I'm sure.
The other thing for us is Columbus is about an hour away from where we're going to be, and that's where we're going to stay. We're going to get it. We didn't get my all three of my children live in Columbus. My daughter actually lives about 45 minutes north. Well, she had a baby back in December. And the thing was, we were up there on baby watch for a week, but it ended up, we go back on a Sunday. She has the baby on Tuesday. So we never got to meet grandchild number 2. So that's one of the other things we're going to be doing. It's kind of like killing two birds with one stone.
Oh no, that's great. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. We're looking forward to it. Then I have a 4-year-old granddaughter who helps daddy fly her airplane. Okay. My son-in-law is into drones too. So, that was, there's a video out there with that with my 4-year-old granddaughter. Is just like $1 million. I'm going to get it out on my drone channel. I got permission to do that.
Great.
One of the things that I found recently, and this is just, it's kind of interesting here. All right. I wanted to go ahead and get a second, FT891. Okay.
A second one.
Yeah. All right. I want to have one in the shack and one for use, POTA.
Yeah, I got you.
Outside. And, that's the kind of radio you can do that because it's not that expensive. Okay. Well, everybody is out. And when I mean everybody is out, everybody. Okay. HRO, Gigaparts, DX Engineering, Main Trading Company, you name it, they're gone. They're out right now. And I actually talked to somebody at DX Engineering, and he told me part of the problem is, you know, you can pre-order the radios, and
Right.
what happens is, when they get an allotment in, almost all of those are gone because they've been pre-sold.
Sure.
He's, that's a big part of this problem. A smaller part, he said, believe it or not, they talk about the parts shortage. It's like mid-size conductors are hard to get right now, and that's what you need for that kind of radio. So that's why that's running out. But then, I asked him again another question. I said, okay, now you're showing that the 705, ICOM 705, that's not going to be available till July. And he says kind of the same thing with that too. People pre-buy, and I kind of asked him, I said, every time I'd go out there, HRO would show every location have it, Gigaparts had it in stock, and DX Engineering had it in stock, Main Trading had it in stock. And then now all of a sudden it's just like another whisper gone kind of thing,
Yeah, well, those two radios are like staple radios for amateur radio operators. So, like, almost every ham I know has one of those two or both. And you're talking about getting a second of the 891. It's super duper popular. What always strikes me is people are like, ICOM or Yaesu, they just don't get it. If they made this one change to this radio, they would sell like hotcakes. And I'm like, you can't buy them. They can't keep them on the shelves. You know what I mean? I was like, it'd be great to have that feature. Don't disagree with you, but they're gonna sell them just fine. You know what I mean? Like they're not gonna have any problem.
Yeah. Well, you run into. It was real interesting. My first encounter with a sad ham was in one of the Facebook groups, and I was talking about looking for a tuner for the 891, and I found I got an LDG one, the Z100 Plus. Michael Martins uses it.
Yep, I'm familiar.
Swears by it. Okay, he said you won't need a tuner if you have a resonant antenna, and I'm like, okay, whatever. Okay, I'm like, we're not going here. All right, because
yeah, a lot of people would hate on the 891, which is a Yaesu radio, and they would say, oh, it does everything. It's a shack in a box, but it does everything okay, but it doesn't do anything great, and that's why I won't have one. I'm a purist. And I always thought that was a very perplexing position to take on a radio like that. And then the 705 came out, and everybody's like, oh my God, it's the greatest radio that I've ever used. I have a 705, and I love it, but it does have shortcomings like any other radio. And a lot of people were saying that same thing. I only use resonant antennas. And I was like, and you see them using an end-fed half-wave, for example, which is not really a resonant antenna. You're using an you're using a transformer to match the impedance of the feed point of the antenna where you're feeding it. Granted, if you feed it in the middle and you mount it horizontally at a half-wave, then it becomes resonant. But they're only resonant on one frequency. They become near resonant on harmonics. And the thing is that you can't hate on people for using tuners. If somebody wants to use a tuner, let them use a tuner, have fun. I use a tuner. And I even shudder to think I even use an auto tuner because I don't want to sit here and be twisting knobs. And, some of the purist guys are like, you got to use a manual tuner if you're using a tuner. But we play all kinds of games to make an antenna have a match. Doesn't mean it's resonant. Like people say, my Wolf River coil's resonant because I adjusted the coil. You know what I mean? But it's not size, right? You're playing electronic tricks with a induction load on there to make it look bigger than it really is. And that whole resonant antenna stuff is just it's hogwash.
And you mentioned coffee and ham radios, and and I gotta thank To for having me on recently. That was awesome. I just love being on your show. You guys do a fantastic job on that.
Thank
show.
you.
Keep up the good work. I know you guys talked about the new Yaesu FTM 500 coming out recently.
We did.
And boy, that's like, talking about that radio right now, it's like asking somebody, okay, how do you ground your station? Okay. And it's just like, you're going to get a flood of answers. Well, recently they put out the price for it, and everybody's like, oh my God, it's like Armageddon with the price with this thing. And I'm like, guys, it's not even out yet, and you're still,
Well, the thing is like, what do they expect it to cost? You know what I mean? Do they think it's going to be free? And I get that it's expensive, but people need to realize that ham radio is a niche hobby. It's not like everybody in your neighborhood's going to have the FTM 500. There's going to be one guy in your neighborhood with that, and that's you, right? So they don't get the larger scale supply and demand economics on those radios, and that is a feature-rich radio. It looks like a fantastic radio. I'd love to have one.
It does,
I,
yeah.
I don't understand all the drama around it. Now, with that radio, as with every other one I've ever seen, is there stuff that they could get better? Sure, sure.
Oh, yeah.
But it looks like it would be a great radio to play around. I'd love to have that in my Jeep.
Oh, yeah. It's same here. Having that out. Well, I have a Highlander. Having that out in the Highlander, that would just be golden. I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would die and go to heaven having something like that. And is that on my wish list? Sure. And I know a lot of people have a lot of thoughts about the 900 coming out. And see, one of the things here, and I talked to Josh at length about this. In California, there's a pretty good community of microwave users, and
Right.
of course, their topography out there is real conducive to it. And as Josh aptly pointed out, Florida does not have that kind of topography, so we don't
Right.
have a lot of microwave users down here. So and it's kind of on it's kind of on the pricey side. But one of the things I've told people is, look, this is the kind of radio you need to take a step back and let others take a look at it if you're interested in it, and see the pluses, see the minuses, and see if that's something you want to dive into. But you're gonna have to break open a couple of piggy banks to get something like this.
Well, there's different clubs across the U.S. have different interests, right? So you might have one club that's really into DXing and contesting and stuff like that. Then you may have another club that's really into APRS and fox hunting and that kind of thing. And so I'm sure that there's clubs that are really big into microwaves. Like I had a company call me up, and they were like, "Hey, do you want to review this 1.2 gigahertz radio?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to, but I don't have anybody around here that I don't have another 1.2 to test it against. I just don't." So I was like, I can't do the type of review that you want, so I can't. I don't. Thank you, but no thanks. Now, maybe you belong to a club that has one, and all your buddies are in the microwave. Then I can see that. Maybe you're going to go to the park that has the topography that you're talking about that supports ideal community. Now, you can do, I guess, other stuff like satellites and birds and all that stuff with that. And if that's what you're into, then that's a fantastic radio for you. When I saw Ray from ICOM say it was like an everyday ham type radio, maybe I'm not an everyday ham. I just don't see it. Like I would never buy the 900 because, well, I say I would never, but I wouldn't today because I don't mess with those frequencies. Would I like to? Sure, but I don't. So it's just not even something I'd consider.
And that's a great point, because if you're not using those kind of frequencies right now, why would you go ahead out and spend thousands of dollars to get something that is just going to sit there? That's the kind of thing that I look at with that. And a lot of people are kind of listening to me, because I've gotten some pretty positive feedback saying, we're just going to take a step back and take a look at it, which I think is a good idea.
Well, I think that, like, when you talk about putting up a 40-meter antenna and getting on 40 meters and talking on some of the nets and stuff, it's a relatively simple and accomplishable, achievable task. When you start talking about messing around with beam and microwaves and potentially building a dish and all that, is a higher precision activity that you're doing, right? And the more like you need better cabling, you need better coax, and you need to be more directional with your communications with the way that you're beaming that signal. It's not like just blast it out omnidirectional. You don't do that really.
Yeah.
And hey, Josh, and so my thing is on it is that it's not it's something for somebody who's a little bit more skilled as well, right? And so that's where I think that the club usage of that radio is probably where you're going to see it. At least that's what I'm thinking anyway.
Yeah, and that's one of the things for me. I'm going to take a step back, take a look at it, and who knows, maybe 2-3 years from now, if a community develops, sure,
Right.
why not? But I'm one of those guys. With something like that, I'm just gonna take a step back. Now, for instance, for me, with like the 500 that's coming out, the AC 500, I may take a dive into that, because that looks like a real interesting radio with a good feature set. And what was real interesting was, Ham Radio Outlet posted on one of my tweets. I put ouch for the price, and they said, realize, Bill, this is only what, $50 more than when the 400 came out, and and they brought it was it's a good point, albeit it's like how many years difference
Mhm.
in equipment difference, but still, thinking about that, and that's one of the things on my drone channel that I try to do is I try to remind people, everybody's like, oh, a new drone comes out and it's like, oh my God, look at the price of that. God, but I'm like, look at what you get with it. And
Yeah.
that's one of the things that I like to do with ham radio too, is I'm like, everybody said, well, that's expensive. I said, well, look what you get with it. All right. And I think
Well,
that's important.
if you're an enthusiast, right? You look past some of that, and what the guy from HRO didn't tell you is that when they sold the 400 originally, people didn't buy a lot of them, and I mean they were popular and people bought them. But Yaesu had a really big push to get System Fusion repeaters out there, and so they were selling the System Fusion radios at a huge discount, and they were selling the repeaters at a discount, and so clubs were buying these YSF repeaters. Like, in order to stand up a new repeater, you have to apply for a frequency with your coordinator, and it becomes a giant pain in the butt. And there's often years-long waiting list. So what a lot of people were doing is they were just taking their existing repeater and swapping it out with a System Fusion repeater. And then people in the club wanted to continue to talk to their buddies on the new mode. So Yaesu was making a killing. They were doing really well, selling those 400s at a pretty big discount. And that's when you saw the proliferation of those 400s. Prior to that, they weren't selling a lot. Now, I wonder if the footprint's already there. So I don't know if you're going to have a situation like that where the 500's a lot cheaper. But it will come down in price. But again, yeah, it's a premium radio. If you don't want to buy it, there's other radios on the market, right?
Yeah, there's a lot out there, and one of the conversations I had with, I think I had it with Josh, and I think I might have had it with Jason too, is we talked about the ICOM 7100, and I know this was so funny. I was getting ready to pull the trigger on it when all of a sudden it was gone. It was kind of
Right.
like poof, and from what I think Jason said, from what he's heard, if I'm not mistaken, that may show up like this summer, because they didn't discontinue it, but you won't find it on any of the websites right now. But I
Right.
mean, a lot of people said, to like new hams, if you're looking for like an all-in-one, a shack in the box kind of thing, that's a good option for something like that. And I told people, and this is one of the things that I was told when I first started ham radio. So, when you start out with something, you want to keep it simple. And one of the guys said, QRP, don't touch it. Don't touch it for a while, because if you dive into something like that and you're a new ham, you're going to get sorely disappointed, because, you need to develop a good skill set working like with HF with a decent sized rig like a 7300, to have some wattage behind you to make some good contacts, because when you drop down to 5 or 10 watts, it's a whole different ball game or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. It's not as bad now with the sun cycle the way it is. But part of that could be that I'm more experienced than when I messed around with QRP the first time around. That 7100, that's a radio I regret never getting. But one thing I'll say is that when I was looking at HF radios to buy, my first one was an 817. The second one was a 7300, and I think I mentioned earlier I used to do a lot of SDR stuff, and so I like the pan adapter and scope, right? And the 7100 didn't have that. And people are like, that scope's a crutch. Don't be a scope head, boy. But yeah, I like the scope, bro. And the thing is that I would buy a radio that doesn't have a scope. I have bought radios that don't have them. But if I'm looking for something I'm going to use a lot in the shack, I want a scope. It's a feature that I want, and if it costs me a little bit more money, I'll pay for it. And I don't want to have some jank solution where I go into a transfer switch, into an SDR, I like the scope on the radio. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Well, one of the things, and I always like this. One of the things I'm weak in the knees is about antennas. Okay, open up one of my drawers where I have my equipment stored. You can find any one of 15 different antennas in there. Okay, it's just like end-fed half waves, dipoles, and
Right,
you
right.
name it. It's in there. Okay, Ed Fong. I'm 100% supporter of him. Okay,
He's great.
somebody. I'll tell you what. I never thought I could get an HT to just sing like it did when I used one of his antennas. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
like it's like night and day. It really is.
Yeah. There his the roll up the Edfong J pole, I think is what you're talking about.
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
got
yeah.
I've got two of them, and I have one here at the house mounted semi permanently, and then I have one in a backpack when I take it around, in case I want to use it. He does a great job. In terms of the HF antennas, I live in an HOA as well, and it's always a little bit of a battle, because like I live on a corner, and when I have a big antenna up, people walk by and they're pointing and all this kind of stuff, and yeah, people be like, "What is that, son? What are you doing there?" And I just tell them, Josh, I agree, man. I totally regret not getting that 7100, but I just tell them, "Hey, I'm listening to shortwave radio," and they're always like, "Oh, okay." And then I haven't had anybody complain too much, but I pretty much use wire antennas that I build myself. I really enjoy the process of researching, developing, testing, and then putting up and using my own antennas. I do a lot of that.
Well, see, one of the things I really like is, with coffee and ham radios is, TO is so into building kits and, like you and into that real detailed kind of stuff. And it just amazes me how he just takes a deep dive into some of these things and how he builds on air. Okay. I'm like, you know what, for me on the air, that's not going to happen. All right. No matter how proficient I get, it's going to be one of these things that I'm going to do it off camera. And then I'm going to show you before and after kind of a thing, but no way am I filming something like that. But no, he has a great skill set to be able to do something like that.
Yeah, and so we all talk all the time, like all day, every day, pretty much. We're chatting back and forth and working on projects and sharing ideas and stuff like that, and it's super duper helpful and then handy. And then we all also belong to the larger group of ham tubers, and we talk, bounce ideas, and ping stuff off of each other all the time. So it really helps. I like doing the stuff live, but I don't prefer to build stuff live, because I like to have so many different, like I don't have all my tools right here. So a lot of times it's getting up and getting stuff and setting up and staging and tearing down. And where I'm sitting right now, this is where I do my work. This is where I do my YouTube channel. This is where I do everything. And like if I'm building a kit or if I'm, writing a document, I'm doing it here. And so I like to keep the area reasonably clean. I'm not sure it is, but it's not really set up to do live streaming other than this kind of thing. And then I do have overhead cam where I do a lot of my what I call static drop videos and do builds and kits and stuff like that. But he loves to do stuff live.
He does a great job at that. Question that I've asked everybody, and I always find it interesting. What's one piece of equipment, whether it's a radio, antenna, or antenna analyzer, that you had that you regret getting rid of?
Well, I joke around a lot. I have a love-hate relationship with Zygu. I did have this G90, and it's funny because like when I was looking at getting a smaller, like more portable radio than my 7300, I asked Mike K at MRD because he had two radios, and he's a good guy. I trust him. And I said, "What do you like better, the 891 or the G90?" And we ran through all this stuff. The internal tuner on the G90 is what sold me on that, and so I got it. And I like the radio. I didn't use it a lot because I had a 705, and I preferred to use the 705. And one of my buddies recently, he was looking to build a Go box, and he said, "Hey, you don't use that G90, any way I can get it off your hands." And so I traded it to him for a 5100, Icom 5100 mobile radio. And I haven't even taken it out of the box. It's still sitting over there in the box. But I probably would have never used the G90, but that's the one thing where I still get tons of questions on. And the G90 is such a popular radio. I wish I had that for demonstrative purposes to just show people, hey, here's how I use the G90 to do X, Y, or Z. Like I did a FT8 video on the G90 before WSJTX even supported the G90, and it did really well. And I still get questions on that video today. So I don't know. I'd probably say that's probably not such a romantic answer, but that's it's the truth. I tend to, when I buy equipment, to research it reasonably well, and then if I buy it, I say, hey, I bought this for a reason, and I'm going to keep it. I don't really get rid of a lot of stuff. Now, if somebody needs something, I'll give it to them or lend it to them or something like that. But I don't generally sell a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I had a Yaesu FT7D, are. And I got it one right after I got my license and everything. I was all
Mhm.
gung ho, and then I started looking, and it was just it overwhelmed me because I was wet behind the ears kind of a thing. So I ended up selling it, and that's one of the things that
Right.
I wish I didn't do right now because those things are fetching what they got for new right now if you can find one on eBay.
Yeah, I got
Um,
mine for like 125 new, and they're like 170, 175 new today. But it's funny because a lot of times that's the one thing is everybody always overestimates their abilities. Everybody, I've done it. But like a lot of times people are new hams are like, I want to buy the best HT that I can buy. What's the best? Well, there's a couple from ICOM and there's a couple from Yaesu that are the best, but they're complex. The thing is, it's not you're not picking it up and being like shepherd the lost sheep, good buddy. It's not like that at all. And what I tell people
yeah.
is that buy a less complex radio, buy something that you can program, you can learn the fundamentals and the basics, have some fun, and then worry about upgrading your radio at a later date. And people are like, buy once, cry once. But I'm like, I'm not advocating buying a $300 radio and then buying a $500 radio. I'm advocating buying a $25 radio, right?
Mhm.
Playing around with that and then making
Yeah.
some decisions moving forward at a later date.
That one thing one of the early on a ham told me, buy a radio and don't worry about using the cable to program it. Learn how to do it manually because you may be in the field. And he said that's a good skill to learn. And and I got to say that like an FT60R, those are very basic HTs. That's the kind of radio that I recommend to people. Like if they just get their technician license, I say that is a great radio to start out with. I said don't get the programming cable, program it yourself. That way you learn a lot more. And then if you jump up to get to another radio, go ahead, get that programming cable, go ahead and start doing some of the other things. But at first I said just kind of just kind of do some of the stuff yourself and learn it because you don't learn by having somebody else do it for you or by using a cable. You learn by actually go ahead and entering it. So I did, and
Yeah.
it makes a difference.
Yeah. What's the thing is like, Josh is saying the FT60 was his first radio, and that was my first nice HT. I had a couple of Baofangs before that. And I got to tell you, man, my battery is deader than the door now, my FT60. I just went and checked it the other day. And I'm like, do I want to spend another $45 on a battery for a radio that I never use? I got to figure that out. But the thing is a lot of people have no idea what programming a radio with or without the cable entails. Right? Because you're typically first radio is an HT. You're going to talk on the repeater, and the thing is that people have no idea what the tones are, right? The PL tones, and they have no idea what the step on their radio is. And they have no idea about the squelch setting, and so it can be intimidating for folks. And the fact that there's so many knockoff clone cables on the market, and
Yeah.
what I always tell people is that pay a couple bucks more and buy from a trusted, reputable dealer. People are like, I'm good at the internet. I can look at an eBay listing and tell if it's fake or not. I'm like, oh, okay, well, you're the only person that I've heard of that can do that. You know, um, because the thing is that the fake cables don't work on a lot of machines. It just require an extra layer
Yeah.
of complexity to deal with.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I tell people. A lot of times you'll see people see stuff on eBay and they'll be like, ooh, 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 and I'm like, wait a minute here. You need to be real careful. That's why like for instance, um, a lot of people. Somebody told me about Quicksilver Radio up in Connecticut,
Mhm.
and I bought a ton of stuff off them, reasonable prices. It's a smaller outfit, but boy,
Yeah.
seem to have what I'm looking for in terms of like cables or you know power poles, accessories, that kind of thing. That they always seem to have that, and I really like that. So that's why I tell people I kind of steer away from eBay because you don't kind of know what you're getting.
Right. Now, there's some good established sellers on eBay, but generally speaking, a lot of times it's a fake storefront for an
Yeah.
operation or an outfit in China that's going to sell you some junk. Quicksilver is one of those radio retailers I was talking about at the HamFest that we should be supporting. I see them at the HamFest, and I've bought tons of stuff from them, and they're great people.
Yeah, there's West. I think it's West Mountain Radio. Am I right?
Yep, you are.
I've supported them before, and they've done some custom cables for me as well, because my crimping abilities are next to non-existent. And I'm going to be 65 this year, and
Right.
that carpal tunnel from being in IT for 30 years, it's just like, the risks have been better. So that's why, when it comes to something like that, I'll trust somebody else.
Yeah, I got to tell you, man, I've got a drawer over there that's probably got 15 different types of crimpers in there. I never thought that I would be like when I first became a ham and I needed a cable for something. Yeah, the wireman's great, Janice. And I said, hey, I need this type of cable. My buddy's like, bro, just make that cable. And I'm like, what are you, nuts? I don't even know what are you talking about? Make a cable. But it's a good skill set to have, even if you can't make some of the more complex stuff, just to be able to slap some cables together. At first, it's cheaper to buy the pre-made cables because you don't have to buy all the equipment and invest the time learning and stuff like that. But my coax out in the backyard got mowed over, right? And so you had to cut it and splice it and all that kind of stuff. So you have to learn how to fix and repair that kind of stuff, or spend more money. So I'm a big advocate of learning how to do that. But to your point, a lot of times it's just not, the juice isn't worth the squeeze, right? It's a lot easier just to go on there.
And that's why I found them, and they were real reasonable, very friendly. I really like dealing with them. They generally have pretty good customer service there. They were responsive and got back to me, which I really liked. I was
I love that.
I was pretty pleased with them. And you brought up a good point about supporting a lot of these mom and pop places that come to HamVention and HamCation. There may be one or two or three people that run the business, but yet you want to give them, you want to spend money there. Everybody's all about going, we're going to go DX Engineering or Gigaparts or HRO, spend money there. And I'm like, yeah, well, you can do that any day of the week sitting in front of your computer. Okay.
Well, you don't want to go to the Ham Fest and it'd be two aisles, one for HRO, one for Gigaparts. Not that they're not all wonderful, great, fantastic, happy people. But the thing is that you want to go for the diversity and all of the different people and products and stuff like that. And like other shows across the nation, if you don't support the little guys, the shows are going to dry up.
Yeah, and that's so true. Well, we had a swap meet. I didn't go to it here in Tampa last weekend. The big club here in Tampa sponsored it, and from what everybody said it was pretty good. And what's real interesting right now, our weather has been. See, normally this time of year, we go from winter to summer. Okay, there's no spring; it just jumps. Okay, and we've jumped. Okay, we've done that from winter to summer. It's like low 80s, mid 80s, high 80s already in April. So everybody said it was pretty daggone hot there, but everybody said they had a good time. And one of the things that people told me about in going to Dayton is you better pray that it doesn't rain, because one of the big problems is where the flea market's set up, it's a quagmire. If it rains, it gets really bad out there. And I know from looking at some of the videos, and I think Josh, when he did his video from going there last year, it was like a mud puddle. It was really bad.
If it rains and it's humid, you're done for, right? Because it isn't going to dry up, and that's where you get into trouble. Like that's how I always am. It's like, do you want to take a poncho, or are you going to run around with a poncho? You're going to be that guy. I guess for ham radio, you would stand out in the rain, but there isn't much other stuff where I would be inclined to do that.
Yeah, I like what Janice said. Maybe I shouldn't wish for an HRO in my area. My retirement would be gone. Yeah, well, yeah, that's kind of the same way. Well, we actually have one that opened up outside of Orlando, which is pretty interesting. But to one of your points, I knew the manager of the HRO of the San Diego store that just closed. I'm real good friends with him on Facebook. He's a drone person as well too. And I mean, he said it was just like a bolt out of the blue, and he had been with them for 40 years, and
they just closed it down.
And
did they move it?
They were looking for another place to lease around there, and in real estate and leasing office space right now is crazy. And obviously, they do a good business, but it wasn't enough to justify supporting keeping the store open. So,
Well, the walk-in business has got to be dismal compared to the online stuff, right?
oh yeah, well, they spend half their days doing online orders. I mean,
Right,
really,
right. So maintaining all those separate inventories is
yeah,
you don't get
maintaining
an
those.
economy of scale there.
Yeah. So, I'm in touch. He's a great guy. I absolutely love him. And I asked him, I said, "You got anything lined up?" Well, he's kind of almost semi-retired because he's enjoying time with his wife. And I'm like, enjoy yourself. It's a good thing. But it was kind of sad seeing that. I mean, he filmed like a closeout video, locking the door up and everything till the
Yeah,
last
yeah.
time. I really feel for him. Joe's his name. Great guy. Absolutely love him. Um, you know, and having that HRO in Orlando, it's kind of like I'm kind of glad it's in Orlando because it's at least
A
an
little bit of
hour
a
away
drive,
from me.
right?
So it's a little bit of a drive. So I'm not tempted to hop in the car and go down there. Closest one before was up in Atlanta. So I'm happy in case I really need something that I can hop in the car and on the weekend and mostly be there in an hour. So, it's one of
Well, when you
those.
need something and you order it online, the pacing back and forth and all that, and like 2 more days. But
Well,
you were talking about the cables. Like, what drives me crazy is if I need like a $12 cable and it's like $8 shipping on top of it.
Mhm.
I'm like, oh, they really got me.
Yeah, it's like you don't have a choice. Well, who I found to be the two that I found to be the fastest in terms of shipping and just doing normal Gigaparts, they're in Alabama, so it's relatively
Yeah,
close for me. But DX Engineering, they're up in Ohio. It's like I'll order something. Like I ordered the tuner and the cable for the tuner, and it's going to be here tomorrow. And I ordered it on Monday. I mean, and I'm like, man, these guys are just, and it comes ground. It comes UPS ground. I mean,
yeah.
you know, which is
Well,
which is
all of
great.
them are good. Like HRO, Gigaparts, and DX Engineering. They're all good. I've never really had any issue or complaints about any of them, and I bought plenty of
Neither
gear
have I.
from all of
Yeah,
them.
they've been good. I've had a couple of questions, and I got with HRO with a couple of orders that I had, and they told me to call the guy up in Virginia. Apparently, he's like their head to the store manager. It was fantastic. He helped me out a couple of times with some stuff. Just absolutely solid guy and just great people. And he told me he says you ever have issues? He said don't email me directly. He said don't email me anybody else. If I'm, and I'll definitely get you taken care of. And they did. They took really good care of me. Same with Gigaparts. Gigaparts the same way. All those three. I haven't done any business like with Main Trading Company. I'd like to. I think they're a good outfit, but it's like for me right now, usually one of the three will have what I'm looking for. So
Yeah, I have the R&L Electronics. That's a smaller
RNL,
shop
yeah.
that I've done some stuff with and support. So I like them. But again, I wouldn't hesitate to buy from any of them. But typically, I'll look at the smaller guys first.
Yeah, that's it's always a good thing to support these smaller businesses because it's like without them, they're kind of like the backbone to me.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
well, one of the things that I wanted to kind of get your feedback on is, and I've asked this to everybody who's come on the show is, we do so well in terms of the ham radio community, getting people educated, getting them their technician or general or their amateur extra, and then all of a sudden after that, it's kind of like, okay, you're out. It's like, okay, you're out in the middle of the ocean. We're just going to throw you in the ocean right now. You know, and I said, that's a pain point for me because I hear about this all the time. People, oh, I got mine, but there's no club around me, or
Right.
nobody jumped in to help, that kind of thing. And that just will, talk about raising my blood pressure. That will do that because I want to see people get plugged in, and the best thing that I tell people is get plugged in with try to find a good club, and finding a good club can be a hit or miss kind of proposition because I know one of the clubs by me, it's being 65, I'd be the youngest person there, and then there's another one, it's about 10 miles away from me, that's very family oriented, that has outings, not just field day outings, but just has outings, gets the family involved, bring the radios out, just have a good old time kind of thing. And they're real good at that kind of stuff. And I see that as a pain point. A lot of these guys, and gals get their licenses, and then they're kind of left to fend on them for themselves, you know?
Well, I think that part of it is that it's not the club's responsibility to grow somebody into a ham, right? Like the thing is, they can help and they can coach and they can guide, but the ultimate responsibility belongs on that individual ham themselves to learn how to do
Right.
things. And I think a lot of times people don't want to invest the time to learn. And a lot of times these legacy hams, I guess is the right way to call them, they want to start with all of this complex theory instead of like, hey, let's have a little bit of fun and then talk about how that magic happens. I've never been to a club meeting. I've about going, but I've never been. And I have gone to events like HamFest and Field Day and stuff like that where clubs were there, and I talked to club members. But and you know, I tested in person and got my tests, and I'm a general. I'm not an extra, and I studied on that stuff, and I learned it on my own. I went to the club thing, and I gave a donation to get tested. But I don't think that club life's for me. Even we have a couple of clubs around here. One of them looks really good, and I've participated, changed message with them online and stuff like that. But it's just not something that I think I'm going to go to. Each ham's going to have to find their own way. And for me, it was the YouTube community, and I've got so many good friends across the country. That I talk to, and we have Toad's Discord, and Josh has the HRCC Discord, and Jason has his Discord, and they're in the Ham Radio Clubhouse. They're all great places to learn, build friendships, and make buddies, and get help and leverage each other's experience, and that seems to work well for me.
You know, and you brought up some good things about with Toads and Discord and everything. You know, I think it's important because, you know, your legacy hams, and I think this is where the fail point is. And I agree 100%. You know, if you're in this hobby, you know, you have to put some effort into it yourself. You just can't sit there, you know, and nowadays, you know, we have this wonderful thing called YouTube, and, you know, it's really kind of, for me, it's been like a godsend. You know, it's just like, you know, I'll watch Michael Martin's on some of his videos. You know, I'll watch Mike K at MRD on some of his with his 891 and getting it set up and running, and, you know, doing an NFED halfway up in this tree, and, you know, just learning so much and absorbing so much, and just, you know, and Josh and everything that he does, and same with Jason. You know, all about learning, all about, you know, going out there. And what's great is, you know, these are recorded for us. I mean, we can go out there anytime, watch them, pull them up. You know, it's like there's a guy, and I forget his name. He did a great series, and I think there's like maybe 40 videos on the IC 7300, and same amount on the IC 705. I forget the gentleman's name. He changed his channel name, but just the basics. Okay, just, you know, unboxing it. Here's what you get. These are the basic menus. You know, and then going deeper and deeper and deeper as these go. And these are fantastic. And I think this is where, you know, direction of, you know, I look, Elmering is heading. Now, is there any substitute for an in-person Elmer? No. I said that's always great if you have one available. You know, for example, you know, having one coming over with me, like when I'm getting ready to start dig, you know, and put my flagpole in and things like that. You know, I'm gonna call some of the guys over, and I'm gonna say, look, you know, I want to get some feedback. I want to see what you guys think, what I'm doing here. And of course, you know, one of the other things I'm going to do when I do this is I'm going to get a registered electrician here too, because I want this thing properly grounded. You know, I can't drill.
Yeah, I agree. Don't monkey around with electricity.
I
don't know what
don't,
you're doing.
you know, when it comes to electricity, Ham, I don't mess around. Okay, that's one of those things. You know, I call in an expert. You know, I'll gladly pay whatever to get it done and get it done right, because, you know, down here, you know, we're probably in the Tampa area. There's a reason they call the hockey team the Lightning. Okay, we have probably the second or third highest lightning strike percentage in the world down here. I mean, it's just like, you know, you just look cross-eyed and there's lightning out there. So
yeah, I got to tell you, man, so like the lightning one's a funny one. So I disconnect my antennas whenever I'm not going to be using them for extended period of time, and there's any threat of lightning or anything like that. But one of the things is that there was a thing going around on the internet where some guy was like, if you just take your cable, unplug it from your radio, and put it in a glass jar, you're fine. And it's like, no, you're not. That glass jar is not going to do anything to stop it. You know, it's just that. So people have to be careful. There's a lot of experts out there on YouTube that ain't really experts. If you get them adrift.
And Jeff just put down there, it's Ham Radio A to Z. is the guy that has those videos on the
Yeah.
7300 and 705. Does a great job on that. See, and that's why, for me, I think, you hear a lot of talk about, it's like a dying hobby, but you know what, John, you know what, and I said this to Josh, I said this to Jason, I said this to Michael. I don't see it dying. I see it growing. And I saw a picture the other day of like 10 middle school students, and they're all studying for their technician. And I thought, you know what, this is good stuff. And and this is the kind of stuff that we need to get out and get going, and get kids who are interested, have some kind of scientific bent in them, to get interested in it. And I think it's fantastic when I see stuff like that.
Yeah, I do too, and I think that getting youngsters involved is a fantastic thing. But I got to tell you, man. So like I go to like camping shows and RV shows and 4x4 shows, and I never see any of the ham radio companies out there saying that, hey, ham radio can supplement your other hobbies where you spend tons of disposable income on things that you don't really need. And I think that, and before the GMRS craze hit, I was saying that ham radio, we should have a channelized approach on 2 meters, or where we should have 6 or 7 channels on 2 meters that you can use if you buy a license, right? You're not a full ham, but you have access to that to get people's feet wet and get them in the door. I think we missed a huge opportunity. It almost seems like some hams don't want other hams, but I think that there's a huge miss that, in the 4x4 community has 100% adopted GMRS now. There's no turning back. And the thing is that could have been a space that was captured by amateur radio. Not that GMRS is bad. We're all brothers of RF. I like GMRS, FRS, I like it all. But, I really do want to see people progress into more complex radio experimentation. And that the only place that you can do that is amateur radio, right?
Yeah.
And the more that we can get folks in the door there, the better off we are. But if you keep going to the ham fests and you keep marketing to the same group of people, what do you expect, right? So like with any product or any service or anything that you're attempting to amplify, right? So the ARRL is in the business of getting new members, right? I would think that if I was them, I would be in places where typical ham radio companies are not going to see if I can do market penetration, right? That's how every business works. I get that they're a nonprofit, not a business, but if you're looking to grow, you have to have exposure, right?
That's important. That is so important. And I'm enjoying what I'm seeing here, and it's encouraging to me, especially I got out on Twitter, and it's just like it's like an explosion. I've gotten a pretty good following out on Twitter, and I think that in turn helped me grow my channel. Get up to speed pretty fast, which is really good. I mean, I think I have the YouTube thing kind of down pat, considering I've had the drone channel for about 5 years, and it was kind of easier this time around to start a YouTube channel than like I did from scratch the first time. It was like, oh my gosh, it's just like
it is a lot easier. So the thing is, to become a huge channel on amateur radio is difficult, but to become a mid-sized channel is much easier because there's so much built-in community and support, and there's only so many people making that content. So like you'll see a new ham create a YouTube channel, and then everybody just goes and subs. They haven't even watched the guy's videos yet, and they're like, oh, another member of the crew. And that's fantastic, right? Because that helps grow everything, and it helps people experience share. And that's the whole part of the Elmarine and the club experience that you manifest online is that let's build a community, welcome everybody, get everybody contributing, and we all learn from each other. It's one of the things I love about it.
And kudos to you guys for doing coffee and ham radios, because each one of you have your own channels, but you take the time a couple times a week to do these videos, to do these online live streams, and I think it's fantastic. And the amount of time that you devote to that, and the same is like and when I'm talking, not just you, I'm talking like Josh, he does a great job. His online streams are just fantastic, and then he has after chats with that too, and it's just like, wow, and I told him, I said, do you take 5-hour energy all the time? I mean, really, because it's just like, you're always out there, always doing something, always, getting great information out there for people. And, same with Jason, he does the same thing all the time, getting good information out there. And I love that. And I think that's one of the things, plus, as T.O. famously told me, a couple of times, ham radio is the hobby of 1,000 hobbies, and he could not be more right, because there's so many different, paths you can take, and divergence, and experimentation, and it's wide open, and that's what I think the beauty of it.
Yeah, totally agree. There's something for everybody, right? And that's
It
what's
really
cool about
is.
it.
There really is. Ape, I want to thank you so much for coming on tonight.
And thanks for having me.
I was really looking forward to it. Hopefully, if you get to HamVention, we can meet. That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
But hopefully, some other time we can do that, because absolutely support your channel, and all the other ones that I've talked about tonight. I'm a strong supporter of the community. I think you guys do a great job. Keep up the
Thank you.
good work. Don't stop. And I want to thank everybody for stopping by tonight. We had a great crew in the chat. It was fantastic.
Yeah,
You
thanks
guys did a
everybody in
great
chat.
job.
The chats,
Yeah.
chats are what makes the live streams good. I like the chat.
Yeah. I agree 100%. You guys did a fantastic job. Always a great show when the ape swings in. That's fantastic. So, all right, guys, thank you so much. As always, guys, 7 threes to you all, and we will catch you next week, where I'm going to have HOA Ham. Take care, guys.
Oh, he's great.